Hey guys, today we're taking a look at the backup script that I run for my KVM virtual machines. This is a script that I wrote myself, and it's what I've been using in my production KVM environment that is running on my bare metal Ubuntu servers. So first we're defining some variables here. The bnvars.conf file is a localized configuration file on all of my servers that basically defines directories and stuff that's specific to the server. So if a certain server has certain RAID arrays or directories or something that is different than I normally use, I didn't want to push it out through my Git repository because that would be incorrect then for my backup scripts. So essentially the backup script that is here on the screen is actually pushed out through my Git repo, and that is just making sure that no matter what server the script runs on, it'll still work. So here we go, we're defining the variables. So the echo $1 here for the VM label is basically saying that when you run the script like bash vm-backup.sh, it's basically saying that you can add a string to the end here as the VM name. So obviously in this case, I just need to define a virtual machine name. So let's just say Grafana. So this is my VM name as it is in Versh or KVM, and I'm essentially just running this script with passing that input through. So that's what that is saying. The complete equals 0 is something you'll see later on. It's essentially saying that the backup is not complete yet, just defining that variable. Okay, so the next thing is the backup directory. This is an auto-generated backup directory that is specific to the VM name. Essentially, it's just saying that the remote directory, it's just making a folder for the VM under that directory. Sorry, it's defining the folder name. It is not actually creating it yet. That'll be created later on. Actually, it's created right here in the backup directory. So it's taking this variable and it's making this directory. The -p is just essentially saying anything above it, it'll also create. So if this remote directory doesn't exist, it'll create it. But in this case, it doesn't necessarily matter because I'm not really doing anything like that. The source directory right here is just saying this long command just basically runs through the verse system here, and it's just getting the disk path from the VM itself, specifically looking for the QCOW2 disk and the VDA mount of that. So if a VM has multiple disks, this is only backing up the single primary disk. But I found that's really all that matters for me because everything in my production environment really just has one disk on it anyway. The backup time and backup directory are both dates that you'll see later here in these make directory commands. The source directory is the source of where the current path is of the backup. You'll see that here in a second. Backup time is the time that it is going to start the backup. And right here, as you can see, it is going to begin the backup here. It's the backup begin command through Versh, and it's then going to echo out for the debug console. It's going to echo out the source directory dot the backup time. That is a format that Versh uses for the backups. So when the file is created of the backup of the VM, it will be this exact string here, taking the source directory found up here in this command and adding dot backup time. And the backup time is the date in seconds, which is the Unix time. Now it's going to create a backup directory. This is basically just once this is running, there's no need to keep waiting. It can start the backup while it creates these directories. So it's creating the backup directory specifically for the time of the backup. And now we are just running a while command. So while complete is not true, it is going to sleep for 2 seconds because it's going to keep running through this command. You'll see why here in a second. The current status, it's going to grab from dom job info, which is basically the command that shows you the backup status. And if it sees time elapsed, that means that a backup is running. So if it sees that and the current status is obviously still not complete, it's going to say backup is not done yet. It's going to continue, and it's going to add one iteration here to our to our I there, which is just keeping track of the iterations of this function. So we're going to sleep then 2 seconds, and if the backup is complete, as seen here, if it cannot find time elapsed, then it will finish that. It'll finish this function then, and we'll continue on. So it's going to wait 1 second just to make sure all the files are copied over. We're going to set the permissions on the backup file, which is really just for me, because if I want to grab them from my server, for some reason, like there's some weird issue with permissions before, so just basically saying everyone can read permissions. I know that's not a good idea. I need to fix that, but that's just how I have it now. I would recommend if you copy the script from my documentation that you do not use this line. So the next step here is we are copying the backup to the disk. We are using a move because I'm not going to copy. I don't want to leave the backup in its current destination. If you didn't know, Versh, when it does a backup, it'll leave it in the directory of the VM. So whatever directory is here is where your backup will be. So I'm grabbing the source directory and backup time just like before, that specific file, that new file, and I'm moving that to the backup directory. And you can move it because it is not a live disk file anymore since it is the backup of that live disk file. Then I recently added this, actually, it backs up the XML file, which just makes it easier for restoring. So if something were to happen to the host server, I actually have the XML file alongside the QCOW2 file, which makes restoring a lot easier. Finally, it logs it. I have a post endpoint. Basically, I'm just sending a post request with a little bit of data here saying the backup is true, saying the backup is done, basically, as well as the VM name, so I can log it in my internal logging system that I've developed, and we are finally done. So that's kind of a quick walkthrough of the backup script. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. This is available on my website. The link is in the description. Have a great day. I'll see you in the next video.